Welcome to the Simplifying the CalTPA 2 workshop, Monday night at 6:30. I appreciate you all being here. And I know that this is something that you have on your mind that feels like it is maybe even a weight on your shoulders. And I want to simplify that so that it is less difficult and more clear, the expectations, so that you can jump in and get going. The CalTPA 2 is a bigger beast than CalTPA 1, and I wish there was 3 great bullet points, but there's still just four parts. But there's just a little more expectation or a little different emphasis and focus in cycle 2 that takes a little more clarity and understanding in order to do it. So this is it's a bigger beast. There's a little more parts, but really when it boils down to it, you're still doing the same 4 parts, and you're still writing to the rubrics the same as you did in TPA 1. So we're going to talk about backward mapping. How do we get ready for the expectations? What is expected from the videos in cycle 2, and they are different than cycle 1. Knowing what you need to do helps you to plan your lesson. And then you're going to teach the lesson, reflect on it, and apply. We're going to talk about what to do and what not to do. And I'm going to share with you some future opportunities at the end, a course I've created to make sure that you don't miss a thing, and other ways that I can support you so that you feel confident to turn in your project. And Sasha's here. Sasha was one of my clients for TPA 1, and I did not ask her if I could do this, but she killed it on cycle 1. And so I'm so grateful that she is here so that she can hear about cycle 2 and kill it as well. That's so exciting. Okay, so who am I? Why do I have any right to tell you how to do the TPA? My name is Keisha Fiore. I am a 21-year veteran teacher in California. And the last 9 years, I was an instructional coach in the Central Valley in a big inner city school district, coming alongside new teachers, coming into the classroom, supporting their classroom management, lesson planning, and ultimately, in order to get the credential, right, the TPA. So I've walked alongside quite a few teachers doing their TPA when I was at the site. And then when I left the district last January, in order to continue coaching teachers instead of teaching students, I have gone online and come side by side with a couple dozen extra other teachers to help them successfully complete their TPA. And I understand what the components are and what you need to do in order to successfully get the scores that you're looking for. So I'm super passionate about helping new teachers succeed and to thrive in their environment. And one thing that you need out of the way so that you can do that is your TPA. And so if you want to have your classroom and focus on your students and your planning and your management systems and your time management and your meetings and your report cards and your all those things, right? These things eat up the time that you'd like to be focusing on that. So my goal is to help you simplify and expedite the process so that that is not something that you have to spend your entire year focused on, but that you can get it done in a realistic time period. So most of you know and understand what the TPA is because you've done cycle 1. I'm hoping that maybe there's a couple people here that came to the TPA cycle 1 workshop last week and are just kind of still getting an overview. I'm having some future student teachers and new student teachers coming to these so that they can get an idea of what they're going to be facing and getting into. So quickly, the TPA is a performance assessment for teachers that asks you to do a task or multiple tasks to basically to show that you can support your students at high levels of learning and therefore earning the title with your credential of highly qualified teacher. Okay. This task 2 is focused on multiple measures. How are we using assessment to guide our instruction? So cycle 1 was, how do I differentiate for the needs of my students? I mean, that makes sense as a first step, right? I've got this variety of students. How am I going to differentiate for their needs and still hold all students to high levels of learning? In TPA 2, it's now that I know how to build a lesson to hold them to high levels of learning, how do I use informal assessment, student self-assessment, formal assessments? How do I use those to guide my instruction and know where my students are at and what I need to do to get them where I need them to be? So this is an assessment. This is your time to shine, and you're going to plan well. And you're going to think carefully about what you feel confident to do, what strategies and skills you feel like you can model well to model your best practices. Now, you don't need to be perfect. And actually, because we over plan for this, oftentimes it's hard to do the reflection and application parts because the lesson went really well. In the chat, tell me, how many of you got to the reflect part last time and had to write, the students all met the expectation. The students did a great job. I don't have anything to change. It went well, right? Because we planned it so well. But your normal day-to-day lessons don't go to plan all the time, and not all the kids are meeting the standard all the time. So it's okay if you've got some students who don't quite meet the expectation and need, and that's when the apply part this time, you're going to take that data and determine, am I reteaching for a group of students who didn't get it? Or if the kids all pretty much did a really great job, how am I going to extend their learning to the next thing to deepen their understanding? So that is what it is. It is not something just to try to throw together at the last minute, right? All right, it still is the same 4 parts as the cycle 1: plan, teach, reflect, and apply. I work with lots of clients who do their videos first and then go back and do the planning. It's totally possible to do. It does complicate things a little bit to work backwards and make sure that you're using the right verb tenses. You understand how you're putting your lesson plan together around the videos. It gets a little convoluted and difficult sometimes. So my advice is to do things in the order that they are given to you. Template A, get to know your students. Template B, do your lesson plan. Template C, tell about your assessments. Doing it in order helps simplify the process and keeps you on track to write exactly what they're asking you to write. So we're going to know our outcomes first. What do we have to include in TPA 2? The assessment guide is your friend. The assessment guide goes with me everywhere. No, not really. I don't take it to the store. But when I have a meeting with a client, when I am editing papers, when I am emailing the CTC to ask them what the heck they were thinking when they wrote this, I refer to the assessment guide and rubrics to make every single decision. I do not refer to Facebook for the answers, right? So I'm all for, I want you guys on the New Teachers Thriving page asking questions, because I'm going to go back to the assessment guide and give you a response. Be careful on a couple of the other sites when it's teacher to teacher, because I often find things that I disagree with that don't align with the assessment guide, or that people are sharing their opinions. So just when you know your assessment guide, if somebody shares an answer to your question that seems off, you can go back and double check that with this assessment guide. So the assessment guide, we are on version 5 templates and version 5 assessment guide, copyrighted 2022. And it is for the 22-23 school year. When you apply for the course, sign up for the course, and you pay your $150, that you're supposed to get refunded this year. I hope that's what they said. We could talk about that in another thing. I mean, I believe that you're going to get the refunds. I just don't like how it's being handled. It's very vague. Like, we've got a certain amount of money and we will give you refunds, but we're not going to tell you when or how much. So get in and get them registered and paid for so that they don't run out of money, however much that is. So we're on version 5. And what are you going to do? This is, again, built on using assessments to guide instruction. So instead of one lesson, it's a series of lessons that builds like a mini unit or a week's progression of your content standard. Okay. You've already done math or ELA, so you are going to do the other one unless you're single subject. If you have not done cycle 1 and you're here to see what the expectations are for cycle 2, you get to choose your favorite, the one you want to spend the most time with for cycle 2. That's how I say it. The one you're gonna really build on. Okay, and you can do that with both math and ELA. It's a sequence of lessons, 3 to 5 lessons. All right, so if you kind of think Monday through Friday, how am I going to build this concept? And then if you want to shorten it to the 3 lessons, which everyone tries to do because they don't have to write as much, then maybe it's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. What 3 days really shows the growth and progression of your standard. And then at the end, you're going to do one more lesson in the apply part. Now, I put this here because in the assessment guide, it doesn't show up till the very, very end. And it has taken a few people aback when they're like, whoa, there's another lesson and another video. I didn't know. So I moved that to the front of my presentation so everyone knows that there's an additional lesson in the apply part where you're actually going to teach your extension or reteach lesson. And then there is a total of 5 videos. 4 that happen in the main lesson plan sequence and 1 additional video that goes with your reteach or extension lesson. So there are 5 total videos and 3 to 6 lesson plans within the project. Again, you're going to use higher order thinking. And in this one of your videos is going to be students' use of academic vocabulary. You're going to differentiate, and this cycle has a real emphasis on pointing out your UDL. In the lesson plan template, they have a part of the template where you are supposed to specifically describe that the same way that they were asking you to specifically support your EL learners in cycle 1. Now you're going to point out ELD strategies, and UDL strategies, specifically while your lesson is building higher order thinking skills. And after you've done all your assessments, how are you going to plan for their needs and go back and do that additional lesson? Are there questions? Well, then you're either completely confused or you're doing well. If you're completely confused, please reach out to me and we'll go over it separately. Okay, so our students have to be engaged in grade level content and using higher order thinking. Higher order thinking is when the kids are doing the effort and the work and the teacher is facilitating that, right? When they're creating understanding and meaning. I like to think of it as the smoke is coming out of the students' ears while they are concentrating so hard, instead of the teacher has smoke coming out of their ears because they're doing so much of the work and the kids are like, yes, no, maybe, I don't know, right? So when the teacher's feeling like they're doing a lot more of the work, then the kids are probably not engaged too much in higher order thinking. So These are verbs like inferring and connecting and analyzing and creating and synthesizing and comparing. Those kind of, when the students really have to be able to explain how and why they know something, that's your higher order. Okay. And then the last thing we have to know for our students to be successful is the well, no, not for our students to be successful, for you to be successful is the rubrics. What I do is I take the rubrics from the back of the assessment guide and I disperse them into the parts of the assessment guide where they belong. So if the step 1 rubric goes with the planning section, I would take all the planning parts together and create myself a little mini book all about planning. This is what I need to know for planning. The rubrics are there. And when I write my content, I put the rubric right next to me. When I'm helping somebody write the content, I'm not writing them anymore, but when we put the rubric right next to us and say, what do I need to look at? What are the key components? What is the expectation that's being asked for this section? Make sure that you're using those terms and words. One of the modules in my video series is how to write to the rubrics, with examples from the rubrics, how to use them in your content, how to use the key vocabulary, how to reach for that level 4 and level 5, so that if we miss the level 4, we drop back to the level 3. And on a rubric, it's a 5-point rubric. The 1 is far below, the 2 is progressing toward, the 3 is on standard, basically, 4 is exceeds, and then 5 would be like far exceeds the standard. So we definitely want to aim for the 3 and higher. And the more that we set the expectation and the goal to be higher, then if we don't quite meet it, we still land in the 3 category and grab those points that we really want to have. All right, so backward planning from the assessment guide, there are 3 to 5 lessons with 4 videos, which we're going to jump into now. Then there's an additional lesson, an additional video for your apply piece. Know your rubrics, and know your rubrics and use the terms from the rubrics to write. Paula, thank you for asking. It is a video course that I created that I'll tell you about at the end, but it is something that you purchase from me that goes step by step through all of the process, from what is in the assessment guide, how to plan your lesson, what is in the how to write to the rubrics, and then step by step every single template and the rubrics that connect with that template and the keywords that you should use. So I will share that information at the very end. Okay, so the videos, just like cycle 1, they cannot score something that they cannot see, hear, or read. So what you show them, what you write and tell them, that is what they're going to see. They're not going to try to interpret anything. They're not going to try to guess what you mean. You need to be explicit and clear in your annotations, and what you're annotating needs to be explicit and clear in the videos. There are 4 videos at the beginning. You are creating a series of lessons. Within those lessons, you are going to model some specific skills that you are going to record. Where cycle 1 asked you to kind of show how your instruction was happening, in cycle 2, you're focusing on how you're using assessment. So one thing that you're going to do is academic vocabulary. It's video number 1, but it does not have to be done in lesson number 1, right? So if the kids are really engaged in building and using and sharing academic vocabulary for their content standard in lesson 3 really well, that's the 5-minute video that you're going to pull and call it video 1, academic vocabulary. So you don't have to do these things step 1, video 1 goes with lesson 1, video 2 goes with lesson 2. So when I'm talking about them, you have 4 videos, you're going to annotate them, you're going to call them video 1, video 2, video 3, video 4. I just bust my ear. And then you're going to call them those things, but they can happen anywhere in your lesson sequence. Can I get a thumbs up? Yes, I understand that. That's clear. Okay. All right. So the 4 videos you're going to do are academic language building, educational technology, informal assessment, student self-assessment, and then your 5th one, the apply part, next steps for learning. So video 1 does not have to be done in lesson 1, but it can. Academic vocabulary. Now I've gone through the rubrics and pulled out some of the key things that you need to consider while you're doing them. And the key words here are students. Students develop understanding of content vocabulary. So this is not a sit and get vocabulary lesson. This is engaged students learning and using, developing their understanding of it, right? So being able to use it in context and model it is going to get you far more points than the teacher is sitting and saying, okay, today we're going to do sum. The sum is the answer you get when you add. Everybody say, the answer you get when you add is the sum. Okay, it's engaging, the kids are there. But then when you say, what is 2 plus 2? Or you say, what is the sum of 2 plus 2? And the student says 4, they're not using the academic vocabulary. And just as a side note, as an instructional coach, one of the things I realized about myself and other teachers is we use the academic vocabulary far more than the students ever do. And it's a great idea to have students use the academic vocabulary in complete sentences so it becomes part of their lexicon, because it's going to show up on state tests. I don't know what grade levels you teach yet. I haven't asked, but those state tests use the high academic vocabulary words. And if the kids haven't been using them, they get stuck on them. Second, the students demonstrate the use of the language. We've differentiated for our EL so that they can access grade level academic vocabulary. And we've used the ELD strategies to develop the vocabulary. So are you going to use a Freyer model? What kind of pictorial representations? Are you going to bring in realia? What are you going to do to help all students access the academic terms? All right, questions? I know somebody was asking about the videos, so I want to make sure, Paula, that you are clear before we leave, okay? All right, in the chat, what grade level do you teach? I don't want anybody falling asleep on me. I know it's Monday night, it's been a long day. Primary, 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 primary. All right. Since I've got 4 of you here. All right, awesome. It's just like online learning when we went for COVID. Okay, video 2. Again, this doesn't mean lesson 2. It just means video 2, because you're embedding these skills within your lesson sequence is educational technology. The educational, oh, I love it. You're here so you can help your new teacher. That is so kind. I'm so excited about that. Video number 2 is to enhance and improve student learning beyond the traditional classroom, right? So if you're taking a worksheet and you're uploading it to Google Classroom and they're doing it on the computer instead of on paper, that's not really improving it beyond the traditional methods. That's not really educational technology. That's just doing what we've always done before, but putting it on a computer, right? There's a term for that. We want to provide a choice or a range of technologies for students to demonstrate their knowledge. On the level 4 or 5 of the rubric, it says that when students get to choose the technology to model their learning, it's a higher level score. Now that's not always realistic for us, especially first semester, that the kids really are that good at technology that and we have taught that many different types of technology that they can choose their own. So this might be one of those areas you really write to the level 3 if all students are using the same type of technology, same technology piece, right? So if you're using a Kahoot, which everybody is afraid of, if you're using a Kahoot, how you use it matters, and everyone's using that same one, then you're probably going to get a 3, but that is okay, as long as it is helping students to grow and understand beyond what could normally be done in a classroom. Now, because I brought up Kahoot and because it's controversial online, I'll speak to it. First of all, the CTC training videos that I've watched, that's the only thing they've ever shared is what the kind of technology they've looked for. Not that they're only looking for Kahoot, but I really don't think they knew much more educational technology, and that's the one they could talk about. But you can use Kahoot for things like create a Kahoot, create questions for the Kahoot, and then we do it as a class. I'm using it to monitor and beat my informal assessment so that my informal assessment video and my ed tech video might be the same. You can double them up sometimes. We're doing a Kahoot. I created it. The kids are all doing it. And I'm seeing that like 70% of the kids missed that question. So I have the opportunity to stop right there, discuss the question, discuss the answers, ask some why did you pick this one? Why did you not pick this ones? And move on. So that's something you couldn't do in a normal classroom environment without the technology, because you wouldn't have that instant feedback, right? So what you use matters less than how you use it. Does that make sense? Can I get a thumbs up, a yes in the chat, an amen, and hallelujah? I don't know, something, okay? I love a couple smiles once in a while. Okay, the third video is informal assessment. Now, throughout your series of lessons, you're going to informally assess where students are at all the time. Okay, you don't have to have a rubric for this. You don't have to have a paper for this, but you will describe it a few different times, some of your informal assessment. Informal assessment lets us know, are kids getting it? If we're not informally assessing students all the time, then we're pushing forward, and they could be bored out of their mind because they know this and I'm wasting my time. Or they could have been lost way back there on the tracks and I'm just chugging ahead, chugging ahead, chugging ahead, and they are completely lost. So we use informal assessment all day throughout our lessons to know if students are getting it or not, right? This is the deer in the headlight look. The, what are we supposed to do again? The kids are working and they're modeling their manipulatives to show their thinking for their math, and they're really digging in and making meaning, and you're walking around and you see a group of kids who just, it's not right, and you stop, you get them right back on track. That's informal assessment. It can be something that's written. It could be an exit ticket. It could be something that you're observing while that they're going to turn in and that you collect. But in general, our informal assessment is less formal, right? This helps us know that we can help the students advance and learn more deeply. And the key here is that it's going to ask you how you adjust your instruction based on your observation. So the key for informal assessment is observation and feedback, that you adjust the teaching to help address confusion and deepen their learning. So if I was just to say I was going to focus on a couple focus informal assessments, it would definitely be observation and feedback. It could be asking questions, high-level questions, and the kids are responding, describing, telling why or how, and I'm seeing that they got it or not. And it could just be physical observation, walking around, seeing the work. Okay, any questions? Again, you're either completely confused or you're on track. So I'm going to go with on track because that makes me feel good. Okay, and video 4. This one comes to me a lot for a low score on the test that needs to be revised and resubmitted. So I put the little asterisk star to say focus here, okay? Of all the assessments, I think this is the one that is used the least in schools and is modeled the least for our student teachers and harder to know what to do with. So a student assessment is a student creates something. They do some problems on paper. They write a paragraph. They sequence some events in order. They put the pictures in order to represent the sequence of the story or to show the conflict, something, right? Then they have their product. And then you give them a rubric, student-friendly rubric that says, I can sequence the order of events. I can write a thesis statement. I can support my opinion with details. I can write a conclusion. I can model my learning in math 3 different ways. Whatever it is tied to your content standard. They look at that rubric and they say, hey, I do that really good at a 3. I'm not very good at that. I'm going to give myself a 1. They score themselves. That's what a self-assessment rubric and self-assessment is about. Kind of that I can look back and see, did I learn it? And then as a teacher, you're going to see they always score themselves higher than you would. That's okay, because they're not trained in how to do this very well. And I've never, in all the years I've been in a lot of classrooms, I've never really seen teachers using self-assessment. There's a lot of value to it, but there's a lot of time commitment for it. And it's one of those things that gets pushed aside in order to keep going. But it's a good thing to practice and see how it can be valuable. So it's in here. This is not a checklist. Yes, I have it. No, I don't. Yes, I have it. No, I don't. It's not a, how do I feel about it? I feel like I can do this. I feel like I like doing this. This was something that I want to know more about. Those are not self-assessments. It's tied to the standard, to those learning goals that you created. And depending on your grade level and the type of assessment that you're doing, it might tie into your formal assessment, and your formal rubric might be the same, but with student I can't. So let me give you an example of why that might be. The students need to write a paragraph. They have to have a thesis statement, 3 main ideas, and a concluding sentence, right? Okay, that's kind of lower grades, but we'll go with it. They evaluate themselves and they say, yes, I have a thesis statement. Oh, wait, I only have 2 supporting details. And I don't know about that conclusion. Conclusions are really hard to write, okay? So they assess themselves, and then you give them a chance to revise or improve their work. If they go and do the revisions and then turn that into you as a final assessment or your formal assessment that you're going to grade, those rubrics could be the same because you're assessing the same standard on the same assignment, the same product, right? This is the only video that you can have only 1 student in. How many students, for those of you that are still following along, Alexis, I'll get to that in a second. How many students need to be in each of the videos? All the other videos have to have a minimum number of students. What is that number? The answer is 2. Oh, 2 student body parts. That's what they said at the training videos. 2 student body parts. So the back of the head, an arm, something that shows that there are children there, and you're not making these videos by yourself, I suppose. But this self-assessment can be done one-on-one, okay? And I am going to encourage you to do that because you need to model 3 things. You're modeling that how to use the rubric, the students using the rubric, and ideally the students revising or improving their work. If you can't fit that in your 5 minutes, you can describe this in writing in section H. That's new for version 5. In all the versions before, you had to model it in the video. When we've got multiple pieces to our self-assessment rubric, I'm going to recommend that in the video, you go over one of the constructs. I can write a thesis statement that shows my opinion, okay? All right, let's look at this rubric. The first thing that we need to do is decide, I can write a thesis statement using my opinion. Did you think that you did a good job on that? Let's look at your paper. Where's your thesis statement? Where's your opinion? Would you give yourself a 3? That's what this is. A 2 or a 1 on that? Well, I'm going to give myself a 3 because I'm cool like that. And of course, because we just found it right there. And you say, that's awesome. Is there anything that you could do to improve that sentence or strengthen it? Right? And have that conversation with them. That's all you have to have in the video. One of the constructs. You don't have to show all of the constructs that you use on your self-assessment. Okay? All right. Alexis asks, can this be in the form of a Venn diagram? The product could be a Venn diagram, but the rubric should be a scale rubric, a 3, 2, 1. I suggest a 3, 2, 1 because the data collection is exceeded, met, and did not meet. So why have a 4, which all rubrics tend to have a 4. But why have a 4 if there's only 3 things that you have to assess and find data on? So Alexis, did I answer that? Was that what you were asking? I think we lost Alexis. Okay. And then M. Enriquez. I don't know if that's Mr. or Miss. I don't know. Or your first name. The videos can be no longer than 5 minutes. So if you can model it in 2, that's fine. And you could turn in a 2-minute video clip, but most people turn in 5-minute video clips. If you want to stay at the end and ask me, how do you say your name? I want to say it because it's beautiful, but I don't know how to say it. Ngia. You could come off mute. How do you say that? Oh, Nia. Oh, that's beautiful. Okay. Nia, if you want to stay at the end, I'm happy to get your email address and send it to you so you have access to it. But yes, the teachers can get it when they register. Okay. So those are the 4 videos for the lesson sequence. And then your last one is video 5 is at the end, after you've looked at your data and you've done your reflect piece based on the data that you've collected from your assessments, mostly your formal assessment, because that's when you're actually going to grade and find evidence for. Then you're going to choose. Do I reteach it in a new and different way so that the kids who didn't get it the first time can get it again and have another opportunity? Or I really planned this to the T. They better have all gotten it because I thought about every single student and every single differentiation and every single standard and every single strategy. And so they all pretty much got it. And so I'm going to extend the lesson, and that just deepens or advances their learning. So it could be the next day's lesson. It could be something that takes that standard to the next level. It doesn't have to be something like, now we're going to create a big project on this, and I don't know how to do that in one lesson, or anything like that. So you get to choose one way or the other when you do your reteach or extension lesson. It needs to be significantly different than the way you taught it the first time, so that the language doesn't sound like they just did the same thing twice, because that always gets people wrong. Okay. Low score. I don't think I've seen one sent back with a error code for that, but I would be careful. Just make sure that strategy you use is different. The language that you use is different if you're going to reteach. And then the extension could be adding a new strategy, adding a deeper level of thinking, adding their opinion that they use facts from the text, but now what do they know from the world around them that they could add as evidence to support their opinion, right? Not only from the text, something like that. All right, last part of videos. So we're still backward mapping. We still haven't planned anything. You're going to take all this information and then you're going to plan your lessons. Then you're going to teach the lessons. You're going to pick your 5-minute video clips and then you're going to annotate them. I see the most 2s in this area, in the teach area. And it's generally because the annotations aren't detailed and specific enough. So the page 19, and I know that because I did this yesterday, not because I have it that well memorized, but I should. Page 19 says, your annotations are brief text explanations that highlight your practice and are attached to specific time-stamped points in a video clip. So you're not going to say from 0 seconds to 5 minutes. You're going to say from 30 seconds to 1 minute and 25 seconds. You are going to use these annotations to identify the specific moments in the video clips that demonstrate what you are doing and why you are doing that. They bolded it because it's new language in this version to clarify what they're looking for. So I have seen some university examples that have like 20 annotations, 1 sentence each. And that is not what it asks for in here. It asks for what you are doing and why you are doing it. You get 1,000 characters. I highly recommend using as many of those as possible, and 1 annotation per topic, just 1. Unless you really have the need to show 2 informal assessments and really describe those twice. You only have to do, it says, use each of the 4 annotations at least once across the 4 video clips. If I'm the assessor, I don't want to read it multiple times. I'm trying to get this graded. I'm trying to check off the list. If you do 1 good annotation per title, you can get a 4 on it. And I've seen it happen by someone in this group. Okay? You don't have to have a bunch of annotations. You just have to have really well written ones. Any questions before we move to reflect and apply, which will go much more quickly because now you know all the key components of what you're planning for and teaching and writing about. Oh man, we're almost there. Okay. You can use your curriculum to plan your instruction. Okay. A lot of people feel like they have to rewrite it. They have to invent the wheel. They have to create their own. You may use your curriculum. Most of the things you need are in the curriculum. If you've got it, there's some teachers who are at schools who create their own, but there are curriculum writers for a reason. They look for how do we develop high order thinking? How do we accommodate for the needs of the different students in classes? In California, you have to have curriculum that shares ELD, right? Use it, write it out the way that it is in the lesson plan. You are not copyright infringing on the curriculum. You are given that so you can teach it. If you know how to use that and write it up as a lesson plan and teach it, find all the things you need, you do not need to create your whole own lesson. Okay. We've covered that. You're going to include the 3 to 5 lessons. There's nothing new that we didn't cover. Please do it in order. If you start with part A and you go all the way through to part K, it makes more sense how to write it, and when you're using future tense, present tense, past tense, all those things kind of get convoluted if you go back and write later. You're going to use your UDL, and if you want some more specific help on UDL, you can reach out to me for some hourly support, and I can help you put that in your lesson. There's lots of resources online and hopefully from your credential programs so that that is pretty clear to you. The different types of assessments, informal assessment, we talked pretty deeply about. The student self-assessment, you must use a rubric, and it helps the students improve their work. And a formal assessment has to have a rubric for grading it, but it could be a product, a process, a recorded performance, whatever you need to find out. One thing I did not put in here, but just came to my mind now, so I'll make sure to add it later, is this has to be independently be able to grade students independently. So it can't be a group project unless then that group project students had specific parts that they were doing that you can assess the same standards on. That's going to be a little challenging. So independent, individual accountability so that you can assess and get their scores and find out how to give feedback. When you're reflecting this cycle, your reflection is on the data. This is not so much on my lesson. How did it go? What could I have improved on? What do I need to think about for next time? This is, I've collected this data from the informal assessment, student self-assessment, and formal assessment, mostly formal assessment. And I am going to put it in the chart, how many students succeeded, how many students met, and how many students did not meet the expectation. And then I'm going to find patterns. Okay. What did the students do well? Where's some areas that there was some challenges? What kind of patterns can I find? And then I'm going to choose 3 students to represent those patterns. 1 student who exceeded, 1 who met, and 1 who did not meet. For these 3 students, I'm going to write up very specific feedback that I'm going to give them on their rubric. I'm going to collect their work and the rubric that I wrote up for them and anything that any feedback that I'm going to give them, because you're going to turn that in. Okay. The student self-assessment, you don't turn in the student work. You just a blank copy of the rubric and a blank copy of the assignment, or a description of the assignment if you didn't have them write on, you know, a specific piece of paper, or if they just did it on blank paper or something. Okay. You're going to analyze the data. You're going to describe the patterns, and then you're going to think about, what am I going to do for the students who didn't get it? Or how am I going to push students to the next level to extend their learning? Then you're going to teach your last lesson. I decided that the majority of my students understood the lesson because I've done such a great job at planning it out to every detail. And so the next steps for the whole class are going to be this, that, and the other. Or I have these like 4 kids who exceed all the time. And so I'm going to do a small group lesson for them that challenges them to do it in a new and different way, right? To share their thinking, to dive more deeply, to try a new technology. And I want to do a small group just for those kids who are always needing a push, and I never really get to think about how to push them. That I want to do a small group, I can do that. Okay. You're going to cite your evidence. I decided to do this lesson because in the reflection, I realized that these 4 students really exceeded it, and I wanted to push them to new and different ways. Just like in your reflection for cycle 1, you had to cite evidence from the other pieces of the project. You're going to do that here too. Okay, create a new activity, and you're going to teach the activity and record it this time. In cycle 1, you were supposed to write up what you were going to do next as kind of a mini lesson at the last part. Now you're going to write it as a lesson and record it. Any questions? Charlotte, it's okay. I promise it comes together. It's just a lot of information.
Sorry, I guess I was off mute.
It's all good. I think that's how we all feel. I think that's how everybody feels. You just spoke for everyone.
Okay.
All right, follow the rubrics. Script out what you want to model in your videos. This isn't as important in this one as it is in cycle 1 because they're pretty generalized, like informal assessment, student self-assessment, etc. But like your student self-assessment, you got to fit a lot into that 5 minutes. So how do I really want that to roll out? Format it the way they want. Know the purpose of each template. I have seen so many teachers on both cycles repeat themselves and repeat themselves. Give me a thumbs up if you felt like all you do is repeat yourself. And I'm going to say that that's because you didn't use the templates as they were intended specifically sometimes, right? So for example, template B is the lesson planning part. You do not have to tell the evaluators why you're doing anything. They don't need to know in template B. They don't care in template B. They just want to see teachers doing, students doing, this is what the ELs are doing, this is what the UDL is, move on, right? But over and over, I see teachers say, I'm going to use a sentence patterning chart because this helps students to do this, that, or the other. And they describe out each strategy. And then they get to template C and they're like, I already told you why, right? Template C in cycle 2 is what assessments did you choose and why those assessments? How are those best going to model for you that students are getting it? So know the purpose of each template before you write to it so that you work smarter, not harder. That's the goal, right, Charlotte? That's the goal. Less and more. Yeah. Okay. All right. We're almost done. This is the part where you get to say, okay, there's been a lot of information and it's overwhelming and there's so many pieces. Where do you need to start? What chunk do you need to take first? And what do you just need to focus on? Do you need to download the materials? Read the assessment guide. Think about your sequence for your lessons. So take it in baby steps, bites at a time. So if you want to take a picture of this so that you can reflect when we're done and make your next steps, that would be great. Write them down, that's fine. What can you do to simplify your workload? Where can you double up a video that makes sense to show informal assessment and academic vocabulary, or academic vocabulary and technology? Where can I simplify my lessons and my workload so that I work smarter, not harder? All right, that is the key pieces of, that's the key overview of all the pieces of the CalTPA 2. I provide lots of different support, and I'm going to put in the chat my survey, and I appreciate all of you filling it out for a couple of reasons. First of all, I do this for free because I want you guys to succeed, and I want everyone to have a good foundation for what they're doing. But I've also created this online business, and I have continued support. So the survey also lets me know if you're interested in more support. But it also lets me know, did I hit my target? Am I helping you really feel confident that you know what the goals are in the TPA? And if not, I need to be able to adjust my presentation so I can help teachers more. So if you don't mind filling that out, I would appreciate that, and that would be great. So I've alluded to it a couple times. I created a step-by-step, and when I say step-by-step, this is the same kind of support that I give my one-to-one clients in video form. Most of the videos are pretty short and sweet, 20 minutes, maybe 30. Some are less, some are a little more because of what the content is asking for. That goes piece by piece through the TPA. Every page of the assessment guide. What do you need to remember, focus on, think about? How to plan your lesson. I provide for you a planning template that I created that makes sure that you've included all the parts and pieces. how to write to the rubrics with examples of how to use the terms from the rubric in your writing to gain the most points. Each and every template has its own video. There are 12 videos. Each one is template A. Here's what you need to do. Here's some examples of how to write to the most challenging pieces. And here's the rubrics that go with that and what you should include to gain the most points. Those step-by-step videos, 12 modules is really only, it's $250. And I feel like I priced it super well so that it was accessible to most, because I want to help as many people as possible. My one-to-one support is much more expensive than that. And you get a lot of that same expertise with the course. And even cooler is I've partnered with Teachers College of San Joaquin, that if you do your project and you purchase the units from them, you can get 3 continuing education units. So for a few $100s, you can get those units and move over on your pay scale, combining that, and you would pay yourself back as soon as you get your credential and turn in your units. So I'm super excited about that opportunity to partner with the college so that you can get units for doing something you have to do anyway, right? It doesn't happen too often. If you feel pretty confident to move forward and you want to jump in and try this without the video course, that is one of the reasons I'm here, is that you could see how you feel about it. But you want to do something one-to-one, like, can you help me write my lesson plan? Or how do I include ELD or UDL in here? Or I want to talk specifically about my lesson plan. I offer one-to-one hourly support online, and we would meet on Zoom and talk about that and look at the pieces that you want to look at and make sure that you're confident to submit and succeed on your TPA. Get this off your plate so that you can get your credential and have your class and focus on them, because that's what you really want to do. Okay? For any of you who are in it and you're struggling with classroom management, that is where part of my passion does not lie in TPA. I'm going to be honest with you, right? Doing TPA is not a passion project of mine, but it is the passion project of mine to help you get through it so that you can have your classroom. And that's one of the steps new teachers need to take. It's an area I feel confident in, so I'm happy to help. But my passion is that students have a learning environment where they can learn at high levels, and they cannot do that if the classroom's crazy, if the teacher can't teach, or if it's just not conducive to learning for some reason. So I want my children and your students to be in a classroom where they can confidently learn at high levels. And if that's not happening, or you're struggling with that, or you don't know how to set up an environment that is like that, I have a 4-week live synchronous course, runs monthly throughout the month, 1 time a week, 4 sessions, 75 minutes, and we make sure that that's happening. And that's $450. And you can get a continuing education unit for it if you do the homework, the planning pieces. And so I'll be starting the beginning of October. If you're interested in that, put that on your survey. Awesome. So that is the end of the presentation part, which means we get to start the question and answer part. It's been limited questions in the chat, so I'm guessing that only if there's questions, they're pretty much personal, and we can answer whatever you need until you are confident to go. Thank you for those of you who need to go. Thank you for coming. Thank you for being here. I appreciate you. I appreciate you filling out the survey, and I hope that it was really a good use of your hour. All right, Sarah's got her hand up.
Thank you again for hosting this. I just have one question. With the formal assessment piece, with a student that meets, exceeds, or does not meet the learning goal with their work that they've done, are you showing that to the assessor? You show them the student work?
Yes.
Okay, so like,
you show them the student work, your graded rubric, and the feedback that you give them.
Okay, so
you will also turn in a blank copy of the rubric and a blank copy of the assessment. But for those 3 students, you will turn in their work, the rubric, and your feedback. Although your feedback and the rubric probably on the same thing.
Because I'm in a first grade class, I'm sort of just imagining how this is going to happen. And I'm thinking I'm taking a small group to do this. And that might be the
I
best
think a lot
strategy.
depends on what your standard is, because your rubric is your grading scale, right? So the students can, the whole class of students can do the assessment.
Yeah.
But you only choose 3. You have to grade the whole class because you have to put full class data on your reflection. But you choose 3 students to model the patterns that you saw in the student data. So I'm going to recommend it as a whole class, but for your reflection piece, it says whole class, but you could call it whole group. If your group is going to have to be big enough to have data points and patterns that you can reflect on to have 3 students represent.
I'm just thinking we have behaviors in our class. So I'm really kind of thinking about the students that maybe are academically needing more support, but don't have behaviors. I just have to get this done.
And depending, again, it's totally, I don't know your class or the makeup or anything. This might be one of those things where for the formal assessment, again, the formal assessment is not recorded, right? The formal assessment itself is not recorded. The data you record on paper, but it is not videoed anywhere. Or if there's something that you need a video and those behaviors are going to get in the way, I'd beg, borrow, steal, plead for somebody to take the kids for a little while. Or they're in that table back there with somebody volunteering or willing to help or whatever you got to do, because this is a requirement you have to pass. And so I think that colleagues and admin and support staff, they understand if you're like, I need this one 30-minute block or 40-minute block. Can we please find another place for this couple of students, this handful of students? And I appreciate, and I'll buy you some candy or something for taking them. But I need them out because I'm recording and I gotta hit these requirements.
Yeah,
that's
I did it for cycle 1. So I'm just kind of thinking about.
I understand it's kind of a series, so you got to think about, those things are great though for your informal assessment, for your how did you respond and kind of move them toward deep levels of learning. Those are the kids you had to create accommodation after accommodation for, so they give you something to write about, but they're not great candidates for videos a lot of times. And so they could be there for the lesson, but for part of it, you're like, need you to run an errand over there. And the letter says, please hold for 5 minutes before sending back. I don't know. Yeah. And if that's something you want to talk about more specifically, ideas and strategies, please reach out. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
My pleasure. Paula.
Hi. Thank you again for doing this. This is actually really helpful.
Okay.
Can you repeat what you said? I have 2 questions. The first one is, do you mind for the 3 students we turn in the work, the rubric, and
your detailed feedback. Mm-hmm.
And then I know that you talked about like getting our lessons, like, so if I was doing literacy, so if I was doing like story elements, beginning, middle, and end, you recommend, and characters, do you recommend for us to get those lessons from our our actual classroom curriculum, not make them up, right?
That's a lot easier, and it already exists in the curriculum. You can, adapt it if you need to, but a lot of curriculum walks you through and the levels of questioning, take them from lower levels to higher levels of questioning. There's the teacher wrap at the bottom that gives you strategies for your ELs. How to build academic language is written in there. there's no reason to reinvent the wheel. Well, you're not even reinventing it. You're a new teacher. So as far as you're concerned, you're inventing it. And why?
So
You're not
like
trained to be a curriculum writer.
Yeah, and the main idea for this is to basically take a standard like we did in math and related, like kind of embed this into what we're writing. Is what they're looking for, like a literacy or math standard.
So I mean, almost all of it is embedded already, but the technology piece might be something that you have to kind of create a lesson around or fit into one of the lessons that you have there.
Okay, thank you so much.
I have a question.
All right.
So
Enriquez.
it's Marley.
Marley, thank you.
So I know for CalTPA 1, we have to type up a lesson plan. So do we have to create 3 to 5 different lesson plan templates and submit those?
Yes, the answer is yes and no. The answer is on template B, there is, this time you don't get to create your own template or use your own template. They give you a graph or chart that has a bunch of boxes on it. You copy and paste it. That's a great question. Copy and paste it 3 to 5 times, and you fill it out 3 to 5 times. And then on your apply part, they don't give you a specific lesson planning template. They just want you to describe your lesson. Similarly to the apply piece in cycle 1, like what is your next steps? Why are you going to do this? How do you know that this is going to be the best for the kids? What did you do differently in this one than before?
Okay, and I have one
It's a very specific thing, and it says copy and paste. Do it before you start writing in it, so you don't have to go back and delete.
Okay, and my last question is, for like bilingual, I guess for like the B-clad, are the templates all in English, or are there certain things we can do in Spanish, like cycle 1?
Everything's in English, but if you teach in Spanish, you can teach in Spanish. You can turn in content where the kids have written in Spanish and those kind of things, but the templates are all written in English.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
I'm gonna write down this quick email somebody gave me so I don't lose it when I log out.
Thank you so much. Have a great evening, night.
Good, thank you. You're welcome. Charlotte.
I have a quick question. The last time I turned it in, they said I didn't have enough ELD and they just gave me an error code and they didn't even read any of it. So my thing is, I guess my question is, should I have different ELD standards for every, because that's what I was thinking, is I didn't have to have different ones for every day, but they didn't even read it this time. They just gave me the error code, gave me a code to redo it.
Charlotte, I would love to look at your returned rubric and see if I can help you find a couple quick areas to add those in. It could be easy as the goals aren't written right. It could be that you didn't model it enough or write about it well enough in the lesson plan. And again, I think that leads to another good answer, is that you don't have to have a list of 5 or 7 standards. You just have to have a standard that builds in intensity. For your content, or a couple of standards that you're going to hit throughout the series. Same thing for ELD. But make sure your ELD standards match the level of the content standards. If you say that most of your ELs are level 3s and 4s, but you're giving them sentence frames, but or conversation frames, that's not what they need. But they might need a paragraph frame, or they might need academic vocabulary development, so that they and a anchor chart for that, so that they can refer to it and stuff like that. So if you don't mind, you're already in the New Teachers Thriving group, right?
Yeah, and I'm starting over with a new class. So I'm just redoing it. But I
Don't
just, that was
redo it
kinda
yet.
like-
Please just reach out to me through there.
okay,
And let me see if there's some quick ways to get those points back, or I might say, just redo it.
yeah. That's kind of where I'm at. I'm just like, I just want to get it done. I'd
I
rather
know,
just.
I know.
just
I
be
mean, and if
done.
you're feeling like there's some missing stuff or it wasn't the level that you wanted, those videos are literally gonna like make sure you
Okay.
don't miss anything too.
Okay,
So if
okay,
you want to reach out to me first and say, hey, can you look at my rubric and see if I can get a few quick points? Then we will.
Okay.
If you think that it's best to start over, then
okay.
let's do that too. Okay.
All right, thank you. Have a good
My
night. Thank
pleasure.
you.
Bye.
Bye.